I'm going to record this, and I want to welcome everybody. I'm Mary Ellen Dombrowski, President of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber of Commerce. And today's webinar is PPP is reopened, learn about first draw, second draw, and get the forgiveness updates. It's being presented today by Catherine Marx, who's the District Director of the Connecticut District Office of the Small Business Administration. Catherine was appointed Director on September 28, 2020. And as District Director, she's responsible for leading the Connecticut SBA in the effective delivery and management of SBA's financial and business development programs throughout the state. Her office has a mission to advise, assist, and advocate for the interests of small businesses statewide. Central to this mission is a close collaboration Ms. Marx fosters between small businesses and lending partners, SBA resource partners, economic development professionals, and state and local entities. And I've been on many, many meetings where Catherine is everywhere, and she's just doing an amazing job during a very, very difficult time and being new to the position. So we're grateful for you, Catherine. One of SBA's lending partners is Webster Bank. And today we have Annette Larabee, who's the Senior Vice President and Senior Relationship Manager, who has well experienced in the processing of PPP applications. And she's going to be available to provide answers to questions that you post in the chat. So we're going to keep you all muted, but if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. And we welcome you, Catherine and Annette. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, and thank you to the entire chamber for having us. What I'll do here is I'll give a brief overview of the programs, I guess, and then let Annette speak and talk about it from the lender side, and then we'll open it up to conversation. Does that sound good to you? Perfect. And I have some exciting news today. We track how many approved PPP loans there are in Connecticut. And we have topped over $1.9 billion. And that's just since the opening in January 11th of 2021. So we are grateful to the chambers for getting out the information. We are grateful for our lending partners who the loans go through. And we're thankful for our resource partners. All of this works together to help our small businesses get this funding that they need so that we can indeed recover from this invisible disaster that we're all dealing with. Next slide. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the new round of PPP that was appropriated in the Economic Aid Act. The current slides are as current as February 5th, and I know there's going to be some questions as to the administrative changes that President Biden talked about on Sunday. I have some of that information, but these slides right now are going to give you the basics that were in the Economic Aid Act on February 5th. Next slide. And so what does SBA do? Mary Ellen talked about that I am responsible for the programs. And the economic aid funding is coming through SBA in these programs. One is the Paycheck Protection Program that we're talking about. And while that slide says a loan program, let's remember that it is intended for the Paycheck Protection Program to be 100% forgivable if the application is correct and if used correctly. We also announced in the Economic Aid Act that there is some debt relief for our current SBA 7A and 504 and microloan borrowers. We have the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is called EIDL. So that has been expanded. So we can still offer that to businesses that need it. For COVID-19, that maximum is $150,000. And then we still are working to stand up the Shuttered Venues Operator Grant. So those are the 4 programs that we at SBA are working now to get out to help our smallest of the small businesses. Next slide. So how did the Paycheck Protection Program change? From 2020 to 2021, number one, it expands the eligibility, how these funds can be used. The borrower can now select the covered period between 8 and 24 weeks. I know we already have a question in the chat room about the covered period. What does covered period means? That means you use the money between either 8 weeks, 24 weeks, and now anywhere in between. Most importantly, you're going to learn a lot of terminology. Second draw terminology. Second draw means that there is an opportunity for the businesses that need it to get a second draw PPP loan in 2021. Really important. Very important for those filing their taxes. The IRS has ruled, and I would definitely have you check the IRS website and check with your tax advisors, but now the expenses that were covered for your PPP loans in 2020, those expenses can be deducted on your federal taxes. So this is new to the program. So this was not the way it was presented last year in 2020. This is new, but it affects your fiscal year 2020 tax return. And we've simplified forgiveness. So the PPP loan process is you get the loan, you use the expenses properly, and then you go through the forgiveness. And we are trying to simplify that forgiveness for our borrowers. Next slide. So what does first draw mean? So we talked about second draw, but first draw means that if you did not receive a PPP loan in 2020, it closed on August 9th. So if you did not receive a loan prior to August 9th of 2020, here in 2021, you can indeed get a Paycheck Protection Program loan. Now, these loans are still based on the old eligibility requirements, though they've been expanded. So this would include larger companies, companies of people up to $500. This includes a larger loan amount. So important that folks can indeed still get a first draw PPP. You might be saying to yourself, well, why would they want that? I spoke with a realtor in Hartford who during the summer just was not sure she wanted to take on this PPP loan process. August 9th came and went. She regretted that decision. She now has gone back and indeed has been approved for a first draw PPP loan. Remember, any of these dates, there is a deadline. It's March 31st, 2021, which, believe it or not, is just a month away, or until the appropriations are exhausted. As of right now, the appropriations were right around 49%, so we haven't even used half of it yet. And then another important key factor, a business has to have been in business by February 15th, 2020. So a lot of people did start businesses last spring, believe it or not, but they are not eligible right now for the PPP loans. Next slide. So how did we expand eligibility? Number one, housing cooperatives, 501c6s. This might be the Connecticut Chamber of Commerce right now, and news organizations. But what I really want to stress on this slide is sole proprietors, independent contractors, LLCs. You are eligible for first draw. The message was not, did not get out to a lot of folks last year. So you are indeed eligible for first draw PPP loans. Next slide. So what does a second draw PPP loan mean and why is it different? So you received your PPP loan in 2020, and I hope that you used it well, but your business is still in need. What does need mean? That means that your reduction in gross receipts is less than or is more than 25%. So you have a gross receipts reduction of 25%. You can still do your average payroll cost of 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost. That will be the maximum amount of your loan. up to $2 million. So that has decreased from the first draw to the second draw. So your loan only can be a maximum of $2 million. And we heard from the restaurant and accommodations industries, we're trying to help them. So for them, they get to do 3.5 times their monthly payroll costs up to $2 million. So second draw, couple things, have to be 300 employees or less. You have to have suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. It's still 2.5 times average monthly payroll costs, up to a maximum loan amount of $2 million. And food and accommodation and food services is 3.5 times average monthly payroll costs, still with that $2 million maximum. Next. And again, we increased the eligibility criteria here. Question I often get asked is, can I do a second draw PPP loan if I didn't do the first? No, your application would be a first draw PPP loan. And you would have had to have done it rather early because your covered periods can't overlap. Again, no more than 300 employees. We've already talked about that, and demonstrate a 25% reduction in gross receipts. And how do you demonstrate gross receipts? It's comparable quarters of 2019 to 2020 or year over year. Next slide. The application process, we have someone from Webster Bank that will go through this some more. But if you do need a lender, we have a lender match. The application is through the bank. And then the bank will send it up to SBA, and then you'll get the loan number and hopefully you'll get approved. Next slide. And we hope that all loans are 100% forgivable, but if they are not, very reasonable terms, 1% flat interest rate. And when does it start? It starts when you know how much is not forgiven, and or if you don't apply for forgiveness, it's 10 months after the last day of your covered period. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. One back. So we'll talk a little bit about loan forgiveness. How does loan forgiveness happen? So you don't do it through the SBA. You actually do loan forgiveness still through the bank. So you're going to go onto your bank's portal. Each bank is different. Each lending institution is different. You're going to go onto the portal and you're going to fill out the application that best suits your needs. So we have a simplified forgiveness for those 150,000 or less. And you fill out that. The bank has 50 days to review it, and I believe we have 90 days to review it. So it's going to take some time. It's not going to be instantaneous. And that's what I'm dealing a lot with right now is people are saying, well, I put in my forgiveness, but I haven't gotten the money yet. It's not instantaneous. The forgiveness process has a lot of compliance issues that we're working through to be good fiduciaries of the taxpayers' money. So again, it's not a it's not a weak process. The bank has time to review the application, as does the SBA. As I talked about, if you are a current lender, in 7A 504 or microloan borrower, there is some debt relief, and we're happy to go through that with folks if they need it. Next slide. And I talked about my resource partners. Mary Ellen talked about the fact that we have fantastic resource partners here in the state of Connecticut. And usually I don't like to use four-letter words on webinars, but I will today, because these resource partners are free. They are free for all of these businesses in Connecticut. Talk to them, get the information, let them help you, let them get you to be able to expand. Right here, I have the contact information for the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. And they operate in almost every single chamber in the state. The Women's Business Development Council, they have 3 locations throughout the state. Next slide. We have the Entrepreneurial Center at the University of Hartford. while that does say Women's Business Center, they help anyone who walks through the door. And then really, I think just a fantastic resource is our SCORE business mentors. Now, you can use 2 resource partners. So you can talk with the Connecticut Business Development Center, and you can talk to SCORE. SCORE are executives who volunteer their time to be mentors. And that is just a valuable relationship for both people and can really help your business expand and exceed your expectations. Next slide. And then we're really trying to make every effort to reach our smallest of the small. So our non-traditional resource partners in Connecticut, we are working with the Black Business Alliance, with HEDCO, which is out of Hartford, which does a lot of our microloans, with the Spanish American Merchants Association. We are actually doing a webinar this evening that is in Spanish to try to reach the smallest of our small businesses and make sure they understand the resources that are available. Next slide. But most importantly, I haven't yet talked about some of President Biden's changes to the PPP program. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Twitter at SBA_Connecticut, or more importantly, sign up for our newsletters. These are not daily newsletters. These are newsletters when important information is going to come out. So we encourage you to stay connected with SBA. We are here to serve you, to help your businesses start, grow, expand, and recover. And, stay with us, make sure you understand our programs. And I know by being involved with us, it will definitely help you in the year ahead. Next slide. That's it. Thank you. Oh. So I'll turn it over to Webster to give a little updates, and then maybe in the conversation afterwards, we can talk about some of President Biden's changes that he just announced yesterday morning.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Annette Larabee with Webster Bank, and I'm here to hopefully answer any questions you may have. But just so you have an understanding of what banks are doing right now is we are still processing first round PPP loan applications, processing second round applications, helping people with forgiveness. And also we are still doing new lending, new 504 loans, new 7A loans. And so the SBA has been a wonderful partner for all of us and helped many of our clients. So we really appreciate what you're doing, Catherine. It is an overwhelming amount of information that's coming in. And all I can ask of you is that everything be, take your time in completing the applications, make sure everything is initial, checked off, dated, and consistent from first round, second round, forgiveness, that all the information is consistent. Right now, there is a big delay in forgiveness applications. I don't believe that any application over $2 million has been actually forgiven. They've all been, from our end, like we've reviewed them. We had our 60 days to review. We've uploaded them to the SBA and they have 90 days. So we're waiting for them to give us feedback if they need anything else, or we understand they're auditing all of them. So it's a very tedious, slow process. And with the second round new loans, the SBA is not just giving banks a number. They're actually looking at the files, checking for fraud, doing a lot of cross checks, and then asking us to answer questions to get them, make sure they're really who they say they are. So we just hope that, you work with us and all of your banking partners in getting through this, because it's a great program and we're thankful that it's there. I know there's one question, but I don't think it was for me. I don't know if, Catherine, if you saw the question. It says, can the loans be used for purchase of air purification, PPP, equipment that can be forgiven under the rules?
Yes, so that was one of the expansions. So thank you for asking for the question. Neither Annette nor I can sort of in 1 hour give everyone all the information. But one of the expansions of how to use or how you can use expenses is in the PPE equipment. It's in PPP equipment, and unfortunately, it's also in physical damage that was done due to the unrest in the summer. So those two are new inclusions into acceptable expenses. But Annette, one of the questions I had for you is, what is the most common mistake you see on these loans that when people put them into the system?
Many people forget to initial. The applications ask you to go through the pages and initial certain sections. And many people just don't initial where they're supposed to initial. So we have to send the application back, or they forget to sign it. But most of the things that are coming back now is, we're not asking people for all the information we did on the first round, because we already have that. And we're just bringing the second application into the first round application file. So we have everyone's information, driver's licenses and all that. But sometimes people use different people to complete the application. They had a different email address. They have several businesses, and they put in one place the first business, and in another place they put an individual, and then in one application they put the second business. So they're not consistent. So what's very important is that people look at what they did on the first round, the second round, and the forgiveness applications, and just make sure all the information is consistent. And the big thing that the government's asking us for on almost every file is they're asking for an EIN verification letter from the IRS. And many people aren't able to find theirs. Maybe their business has been around a long time, or they can't find that original one. And the IRS is faxing them or mailing them upon request, but it does cause a delay in people's applications. So if you don't have your EIN verification letter, I would make sure that you go ahead and contact the IRS and start working on getting that, because that's been a big stop in many of the approvals from SBA. I'm trying to think of anything else. Have you seen or heard of any other ones?
No, I get that, and I get people get confused between Social Security numbers and EIN numbers, and then the name of the business versus how they were incorporated. And between the first draw, second draw, idle loans, that can be a thicket to untangle.
Yeah, because it's considered to be fraud. So if you applied and your name was ABC Corp LLC, and then you applied as ABC LLC, and then you applied as ABC Corp, they're going to think you're not real because it's not consistent. And maybe that's what you call yourself, but it really needs to be consistent in all three places. I think there's another question.
Right. So the next question is, I received the PPP and I received an EIDL. And remember, that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Can the EIDL be forgiven? The EIDL cannot be forgiven. So that's the answer to number one. Also, I tried to apply for the second draw for PPP, and the way I tried didn't work. How do we apply for the second draw PPP? So, and I'm going to let you answer this question, but I'm just going to give one thought here. A question that I often get is, do I have to use the same bank from first draw to second draw? And my answer is no. However, using the same bank does make it easier. Can you incorporate that answer into this gentleman's or this person's question on how to apply for the second draw?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it didn't work means. I don't know if that means you haven't gotten an answer yet, or you were declined. We are receiving lots of declines from the SBA, but they're not, they're pending declines, meaning they're telling us they're getting kicked out and they're providing an error code. And we have to figure out what that error code means. And in some cases, it's because people were a convicted felon and maybe they didn't disclose that on the first round and they weren't allowed to get the loan. And so that came up in the second round, or they're not a citizen, or there's other reasons that maybe the government now has said, wait, this person shouldn't have gotten money. Right, Catherine? I'm trying to think of what else that
No,
they
I
might
think-
have got.
I think you said it correctly when you say pending decline.
Yes.
So there is another lending institution. I won't say names here. But they sent out a notice to every one of their customers that they were declined,
Oh,
but they weren't. They
right.
have they have a code on them, and you
Yes.
have to work through the code. Fraud charges, that could be, though President Biden is changing some incarceration rules. If you owe money to the government, that is going to be a non-starter.
Yep.
President Biden is changing whether you have a student loan, that's not going to be a non-starter. But there are certain hold codes that cannot move forward, and it's truly a declined second draw. But so many of the hold codes can be worked through. And it takes talking with the lender, getting the proper paperwork to the lender, and having them upload them. The lender can't do it without the proper documentation from you. So if you have received a notice that you've been declined, make sure you go to your lender and say, is this a full decline or is this a hold code that we can work through?
Correct.
Do you have any comments on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, we are still working through anyone who had been declined. Like you said, it was a code. And then sometimes we'll submit something to remove that code and we'll get another code. So it's a very tedious process, but we are working with each client and trying to resolve those codes and get them, what they're expecting. It looks like there's another question, which I hope you can answer, Catherine.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say those same codes, Annette, can also hold up the forgiveness process, correct?
Yep. Yeah, we
Yeah, so
have
it's the same
people, and it's asking for information to verify who you are to prevent fraud. And again, it's oftentimes people use different numbers, EIN, tax ID in one of the applications. And so it's automatically going to get kicked out for review. And, you're going to have to provide paperwork on what all those numbers mean and who they are so that they can verify they're really the right company that got the money and that's given forgiveness.
Right. So the gentleman who, said that his second draw didn't work, I think he needs to get more information as to whether there's a hold code that can be worked through. The next question is the date about opening your business. The terminology is you have to have been in business on February 15th, 2020. So if your business started on May 31st, 2020, that is beyond the date. I'd like to tell you that the Women's Development Center does have some grants available, and they're grants up to $10,000. So that might be an option for you, but you do have to have been in business February 15th of 2020. So the question is, if you had not applied for the first PPP, can you apply for the first PPP and second together if you think you qualify? You want to take that one, Annette?
Yeah, so what we're telling people is apply for the first PPP loan. You have to do that application, go through that process before you can apply for a second one.
Right, right. And I'm going to answer a question that's not asked, but it's often asked in my webinars is, do you have to have gone through the whole forgiveness process for the first draw to get a second draw loan? And the answer to that is no, right? You don't have to have gotten that process. Most people haven't even started the forgiveness process, or if they have, they're still in the belly of it, and we know that. So you do not have to have gone through the forgiveness process. However, an important however, you do have to anticipate that you will use all of your first PPP loan properly. So that's 60% on payroll. So you do have to anticipate that you will use all of your first draw PPP before you apply for your second draw. Can you ask for forgiveness on 12 weeks of payroll expenses and 24 weeks of expenses? Or would you use 24-week period? It has been for all.
I would use payroll, whatever you can do. If you have the payroll, I mean, it's the Payroll Protection Act. Most people are applying for forgiveness solely with payroll because the government was so generous in expanding the amount of weeks you could use that it makes it a much simpler process. I have hardly seen any using all the other things you can include, but I'm not sure specifically do you have any further thoughts on that, Catherine?
I think you're right, and I'm going to just frame it a little bit different. When we talk about getting forgiveness, it has to be at least 60% on approved payroll expenses. It can be 100%, and I think Annette's right. A lot of people find that when they go through the forgiveness process, they can use 100%. Why is that? That is because your loan amount is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So that's around 10 weeks of your average monthly payroll. If you are able to then have a covered period of 24 weeks, mathematically, a lot of your payroll can be used in the calculation of forgiveness to get to the maximum of 60%. So how can I apply for the grant? I own a home care business. Mary Ellen, would you be able to give that person the contact information for the WBDC who has the grant applications currently available?
Sure.
Thank you.
We applied for, I'm not sure the question was finished.
We applied
Okay,
for it,
so-
maybe?
So maybe they applied for it. The other missing component of this conversation is the state piece. So not to just have complete alphabet soup here, but DECD, the Department of Economic and Community Development, was giving out grants. I work for the people. I work for you through the federal government, the SBA, and Annette and I are talking about the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the 7A program, and the 504 program, and the microloan program. However, the Department of Economic and Community Development, the state of Connecticut, was doing grants. I don't have the proper information on that to be a subject matter expert. That you'd have to go through DECD.
I believe those are no longer available. That
Right.
They went
capped
very
out the
quickly.
grants, and they're no longer available.
Right.
Any final questions from anyone?
Well, I'll just cover some of President Biden's changes that he made on Monday that Annette and I will have to work through before tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and I'm sure she was trying to hop on this call to get more information. But the information that I have is still being finalized. But President Biden, in an effort to make sure to promote equitable access to the small business relief, for 2 weeks, he is going to ask that the applications are only for businesses with 20 or less employees, so have fewer than 20 employees. However, all applications already submitted. So if you go to your lending institution today, all applications already submitted to the lenders, by the lenders to SBA before the start of tomorrow will still be processed. During this period of 2 weeks, we will reject any applications that have 20 or more employees. So 20 or more, or under 20, which would be 19 or less. And when you are counting employees, that counts one regardless of full-time, part-time, or seasonal. There is still a lot of information to come out today. This webinar is very, current, and there's still information to come out. So again, follow SBA Connecticut on Twitter. Talk to your lending institution. They will get the information as I get it, and we will try to get it out to Chambers of Commerce as soon as we can. But it does start tomorrow at 9 o'clock from what I'm reading here on my piece of paper.
No pressure.
No.
There are a couple more.
There
Couple more
are more
questions.
questions, but I think that one question that many people are concerned about that maybe haven't got their application through yet is how much money is left, Catherine?
Yeah,
Can you
so that's
answer that?
I can answer that. So I love questions that I can answer. Those are my favorite kinds of questions. So the congressional appropriation was approximately $284 billion. To date, there have been approved loans of $140 billion. And that's an incredible number. That's 1,900,000 loans in the country. 1,900,000 loans in the country. So that's right around 49.4%. So as of February 21st, 49.4%, or 140 billion has been, there have been approved loans for that amount. So there's still a significant amount left. President Biden is doing some set-asides for the smallest of the small businesses, but right now that's where we stand.
There is one question here. They applied for their first EIDL loan and have been waiting since April. They've called
Okay.
twice a week.
So Stephen, so it looks like you have a problem with your EIDL loan. And again, I'm going to put my name, my contact number into the chat box. So either there's something wrong with your application, or you've been rejected. And if so, you can do a reconsideration. So there's two ways you could do it, Stephen. Number one, I would encourage you to, and Mary Ellen, maybe you can put in the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. That contact information was on our PowerPoint. The Small Business Development Center can actually help you through the reconsideration process. And as Annette talked about the consistency problems with data, during the EIDL loan process last year, which is very fast and furious, if someone's data was not correct, they got the EIDL loan application got kicked out, and it can take a while now to work through that. So one of the best ways to do that is to work through our resource partners. the Small Business Development Center. They're right here in East Hartford, and they can help you go through reconsideration. But Stephen, I can check on our system to see where your EIDL loan is. So you can contact me, but eventually I will refer you to work with our resource partners so that you can indeed get that loan through to approval. So the question is, can I apply again for the SBA loan if I received one last year? So I'm assuming they're talking about the Paycheck Protection Program loan or PPP loan. And you can, that's called a second draw. So that is open to you right now. You can, for if you meet certain criteria. Number one, you have 300 or less employees. Number two, you can show a decrease in revenue from quarter to quarter from 2019 to 2020 of at least 25%. So you'd still go through your lender. Going through your lender that you used on the first round is always easier, but you have to meet those criteria. But that is called a second draw loan. And yes, again, in Connecticut, we have approved a total of $1.9 billion in loans just since the opening of January 11th.
I don't see any further questions. So with that, Catherine, any final remarks?
Again, President Biden has a lot of changes that are still being implemented. Annette and I will be working respectively through those. So as of tomorrow, there's going to be a 2-week hiatus for the smallest of the small businesses. There'll be some set-asides, and there is going to be some changes to the application process as it contains to Schedule C and what number you use for on Schedule C if you're a sole proprietor or LLC. But I do not have those rules yet written, guidelines through the SBA. Those won't come out till next week. So stay tuned for more changes. Talk with your lender. The PPP loans go through the lender. And to Annette and everybody at Webster, we at SBA say thank you. We know that we can't do it without you. And for all the lending institutions here in Connecticut, really it's about partnership. It's about helping our small businesses. Our small businesses make a big impact to our communities. And we would like to see, as we recover from this pandemic, the majority of our small businesses survive. They've pivoted, they've adjusted. So the best advice I can give everyone is to shop small and have a big impact on your community. Thank you.
And on behalf of the Connecticut River Valley Chamber, I want to thank you, Catherine Marx, SBA District Director right here in Hartford, and Annette Larabee from Webster Bank. Thank you so much, both being here and all that have attended. I hope you'll come back again with an update in the next month or so.
Will do.
But thank you all for being with us today. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.